what's in your head. You'll escape, changing what you need to make sense of it. That's what's in it.
Hello, all you beautiful people, and welcome again to another episode of Isms. I am your host, Grant Trimble, and in this show, I talk to creatives, such as models, photographers, painters, etc., that utilize nudity in their work. The whole purpose of this is to try and understand with greater depth the message, meaning, and choices behind the people traveling this path to foster a greater comprehension of the use of nudity in the arts. Despite the very long history of this discipline, there still remains many misunderstandings and objections to this practice, so my aim is to alleviate some of the stigmas surrounding this endeavor. In addition, I hope to add some context to the greater cultural dialogue regarding sexuality by challenging how nudity is perceived in our society. My guest in this episode is Sidney. Sidney is a photographer from New Orleans that stumbled onto his photo career through his love of cinema, which started at a young age as he watched movies with his father. Though his affinity for film began early, it was a tragic series of events marked by Hurricane Katrina in 2005 that led him to pursue his passion by going to film school. Years later, this gave rise to an interest in photography that started as he walked the streets with his camera phone. In addition to these stories, we also talk about his prized possessions, pushing boundaries and being controversial, having strong women role models, the high, so to say, of directing, frustrations with social media, and much more. I hope that Sidney's zeal for what he does translates, as I wouldn't be surprised if it has helped him overcome many of the hurdles he has faced in life. My suggestion, to get the full effect, is to sit back and enjoy my conversation with Sidney as we talk about his photography and more. How did you get into photography?
So I've only been shooting now probably around 5 or 6 years, I think. And I'm a film school graduate. I went to film school and love movies. I have aspirations of being a director and a filmmaker. So I moved away. I lived in South Florida for about 6 or 7 years. And I moved around the country a little bit to LA, and I stayed in Houston for a little while. And I moved back home to New Orleans. And when I came here, I was a little depressed because things didn't work out too well for me in LA. And I was trying to figure out a way to do something to keep my creative buzz flowing, even though I wasn't really making short films or movies at that time. So I kind of went around to, different locations. This is a little while after Hurricane Katrina. So I went around the city and found abandoned places and homes that were demolished and old churches and stuff like that. And I just started taking pictures of these locations. And at first I was actually doing it on my cell phone. I was just taking photos with my cell phone. And I liked doing it so much that I ended up going to like Walgreens or Rite Aid and buying those little 35 millimeter disposable cameras. And I started going around and shooting stuff with those. And I really got into it. I really liked photography, and I had never really done it before. I was always into moving pictures. And I don't know, something about it really connected with me. I liked the whole thing of just going around by myself to these places I wasn't supposed to be in and capturing these images. And after I did that, for about a year, I guess, a year and a half, I kind of eventually got into shooting people because a young lady, I think she was 15 at the time, actually, she contacted me and said that she was coming to New Orleans with her mom, and she was an aspiring model, and she wanted to have some photos taken of her. And she had found, I had put some of my photos like on, I don't know if it was Model Mayhem at the time or it was something else, but I put some photos, I did like street photography of people that I just caught like at a store or on the street somewhere. And she said that she really liked my style and she wanted like photos like that, but of her. And she came down and I met her mom, and we went on like a weekend trip in New Orleans where I took them to all of these cool, terrible places that I found in the city. And we shot a bunch of stuff, and I was actually surprised. I thought that they were going to be creeped out by all these abandoned houses. And, I'm this guy that they don't really know, and I'm taking them to all these weird places. And no, they were totally down in game, man. And The photos came out really dope. Ever since then, I had the bug to like start shooting people, and it's kind of been going on an upward path ever since then. So yeah, I mean that's kind of how it started, man. I wanted to do films, and I still want to be a filmmaker, but photography is kind of my art form currently. But I still make films here and there when I put my mind into it. But yeah, that's kind of how it started, man.
That kind of somewhat, I guess, answers a question that I was going to ask you, because looking through your Instagram, there are little series that you seem to start, and not to say little series, but there are these kind of series that you start. For example, you have Chile, and then you also reference French cinema. So I guess your interest in being a director, I would assume that kind of answers that question. I was going to ask you, why did you start doing those series, and how did that come about? Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I can still talk more about that. Yeah, so like I said before, I'm a heavy what the film nerds call cinephile. I literally probably go to the movie theater once or twice a week when I have off days from my day job, and I always try to incorporate a little bit of movies that I love or images that I've seen in films into some of my photography. It doesn't always work out because of the subject matter. You know, when you're shooting alternative nude women, it's hard to incorporate that into it, but I still try to sometimes. But yeah, man, I love French cinema, and Jean-Luc Godard is one of my favorite filmmakers, and I really love all of his movies, and I've done, tons of photo series based on his movies, and done some actual short films inspired by some of his movies as well. And even to this day, some of my favorite filmmakers like David Cronenberg and Wong Kar-wai and Spielberg, Stanley Kubrick, all of these guys are my inspirations. And I have a list actually on my phone of photo shoots that I want to do inspired by all these guys' movies that I try to knock off whenever the inspiration hits, and I have the setting and the person and the theme, and I can actually get it. Just recently I did a shoot. I actually think I posted the photos about that this morning, ironically, of a Wong Kar-wai inspired photo shoot I did recently with a Japanese model that's inspired by the movie In the Mood for Love.
Yeah, and, I just noticed that. Yeah, earlier.
Yeah, it's so funny you asked that because I wasn't even thinking about it. But yeah, I posted some pictures of that today. Yeah, that was really fun to do because it was all about mood and lighting and wardrobe, and I love all that stuff. That's one of the reasons why I love making movies, because I love setting a mood and a theme, and I love wardrobe, and I love set design, and I love shooting on location. That's one of my favorite things as a photographer and a director. I'm not really big into using studios. I love shooting in real life environments. So a big part of incorporating my movie cinema style into my photography is finding the right location that fits the right scene that I'm going for in my head. It's really fun, man. The people who I get to use, the models, they really enjoy dressing up and seeing the images, and I show them what they look like from the movie, and they're like, "Oh my God, it looks so much like it. It's awesome." They really get into it. So it makes me happy when I do that type of work, because it's blending both of my passions kind of into one when I can make a photo look like a movie scene, and it gets my juices flowing, man. I love it. I love doing that type of stuff. It's great.
What is then the difference between shooting photography and shooting film? Because you went to school for film and
Yes.
you're doing photography, what are some of the challenges in translating that film vision into photography? What translate well and what don't seem to translate at all? Have you seen any kind of or recognize anything that does translate or doesn't translate?
Yes, absolutely. That's a really good question. Yeah, I think that the difference between them both is basically with movies you're dealing with. Obviously, they're called movies, so it's about like a moving image. So you have to not only worry about one frame, one composition, and getting the lighting right and the person, pose right or sitting right for one frame, which is photography. In movies, you have to worry about not only the one shot, but the next shot. You have to connect things and make them, make sense logically, but also, make them look good at the same time, I guess, in a way. Photography is a lot different. You only have to worry about one shot. If you're like me, I like with most of my sets, I like to tell stories with them. So I kind of go about doing photography in like a movie setting anyway, because I'm always thinking about, okay, I got the model with a wide shot with her standing in the corner, and I'm on the right side of the room. After I shoot that, am I going to go in to get like a close up of her looking down, as you know, that's going to connect with the other shot? Is I'm always thinking about, you know, joining angles and joining shots. I don't know if everybody does that from a photography standpoint, but I
Yeah,
think
I try to do that. I mean, I'm conscientious of that sometimes, not all the time, but
right.
yeah.
Yeah. It's I bounce around a lot. Like if you ask anybody I've shot with, like I can, you know, I can take 100 shots of somebody in like an hour. You know, I bounce around a lot and I get a lot of different angles. That's why a lot of my photography and stuff that I post, it's how can I put it? It's not to say it's cluttered, but I just shoot a lot of different angles, you know. So I'm not. There's some people who work on getting that one image right, where they'll work on shooting that one shot, and it'll take them hours to get that one thing. I'm more about covering the scene, you know. So I'm trying to get as much as I can in a little bit amount of time and make it all look good.
Like
But
establish like a narrative.
yes, exactly, like establish a narrative, and I think that just comes from, you know, my filmmaking background, because you're always trying to tell a story. And I think that in the future, like things I'm going to work every year since I've been doing this, I've tried to incorporate new techniques into my craft and try to up my game. You know, like you start out doing stuff, then you want to do bigger stuff and more stuff, so you try to add things. And I think eventually I'm going to try to settle down with the shooting a bunch of shots in different angles and try to maybe focus on just getting one shot on a photo shoot. That'll be really painfully hard for me to do, but I'm gonna try, because it's, trust me, I'm like a bunny rabbit, man. I'm sweating, I'm bouncing around, I'm on the floor. I mean, you know, you're a photographer. Like
Yeah.
we're moving around so much trying to get that right shot. And I really have to admire the people that can just focus on getting one image and making that image the right image, because I'm too worried about the things. But as far as your question goes, yeah, I think it's a lot harder with movies in general, just because I feel like you have so much more stuff to worry about. I mean, they're so movies and photography are so close together because they're both dealing with the same, you know, contact. You're dealing with subjects, you're dealing with lighting, you're dealing with wardrobe, costumes, you're dealing with makeup, you're dealing with gear. You know, it's all the same thing for both aspects. But with movies, it's much more, you know, like I said before, you have to worry about the next thing. With photography, you can, if you really want to, you can just get that one shot and you can be done. With movies, you can't just get one shot. You have to keep it going, you know. And so it's mostly, it's a little more hard and a little, you know, different. And there's also dialogue if you want to do that. If you're not shooting silent films, you have to worry about sound and editing. And even though editing is all photography as well, it's a lot harder for moving pictures. But yeah, they're both equally kind of the same and also drastically different. And I think some of my favorite photographers who are filmmakers kind of master both of them. You know, like Stanley Kubrick, who I mentioned earlier.
It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, the only reason he's really on my mind, because I just watched Eyes Wide Shut like a week ago, and it's one of my favorite movies. So whenever I see one of his movies, I think about it for, you know, days on end. But a lot of people don't know this, but Stanley Kubrick was started out as a photographer.
Yeah.
And I have actually one of his books that has a lot of his photography, and he was amazing. I mean, it makes sense because if you look at his movies, they're all composed immaculately. So, but his photography was great, man. And he's, you know, you can see if you look at those older photos that he was already learning how to tell a narrative with just one picture before even moving into doing movies. And
which is incredibly challenging.
Yeah, it's that's what I say. Like, I can't do it. It's impossible. I can't worry about just one shot. I'm always thinking about the next thing, and it's incredibly challenging just to get the perfect one shot. And the great photographers do that, you know, like all of the great Henry Carter Bresson and Vivian Mayer, who nobody knew about, and you know, and just recently got discovered. Those photographers are so great at just capturing a moment. That's some of my favorite photographers, even though I don't shoot that style of photography. But they're great, man. Robert Capa is a great photographer. I mean, you know, the list goes on and on. There's tons of them. But yeah, Kubrick was a great director who was a photographer. Larry Clark, who directed Kids, was also a great photographer before he started making movies. Who else? Andrei Tarkovsky, who did Solaris and Ivan's Childhood. He also like took photography. I have one of his books that just shows all of his Polaroids that he did like on set before he actually went into making a movie, and it's breathtaking to see. Because I'm a huge Polaroid fan, which you probably noticed.
Yeah, I've
I
noticed
love taking
that.
Polaroids.
Yeah.
I have just some of my favorite photographers are Polaroid photographers, and that guy, to say he's made some of the greatest sci-fi movies ever. He was amazing at capturing images just on a Polaroid camera, and it's beautiful, man. So yeah, I mean, great filmmakers I think also make really good photographers, and vice versa, because we're all trying to tell a story somehow, some way.
For me, that I've kind of almost approached it in the opposite way that you did, because I first started getting into photography, and it was always about capturing. You mentioned that one shot, and I'm at a point now where I'm trying to think of it as a series and kind of more so telling a narrative. So
Right.
you're kind of going one way. I'm almost trying to kind of experiment going the other way. So it's funny, you know, that different approach.
That's awesome though. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
keeps
That's
you
what
on your
happens.
toes.
You got different people with different styles doing different things, and they work for everybody. Did you go to photography school?
No.
You didn't study? Awesome. Because it's funny. I remember when I was at film school, I went to the Art Institute in Fort Lauderdale, and I remember there's a photography uh, like study there where you can get a degree in photography. And I remember always seeing those guys, and I was like, man, what are you guys doing? Like you're in the studio with all these lights hanging up, and there's all these flash bulbs going off, and I'm like, you guys, what are you? Just come on over to the filmmaking department, man, and make some movies, because this photography thing isn't going to work out for you guys. And now I look back and I'm like, man, look at me. Like I was talking all that shit to those guys, and now I'm doing photography and doing less movies. So it's pretty funny, because I honestly can't even, because I'm like a self-taught photographer, so I don't really know anything about it. I've always just, looked at YouTube videos and read instruction booklets for all my cameras online, and just kind of did a process of
Yeah,
elimination.
figured it out.
Yeah, exactly. Like I ran through a lot of film when I first started shooting, and still do. I'm still learning. I'm just getting into using medium format cameras now, so that's fun and scary and interesting.
I did have a question in regards to that. You mentioned that you kind of jump around a lot, and I was actually going to ask you, I noticed you seem to change formats a lot as well.
Yes, I do. I shoot with a lot of different cameras.
Is there a particular reason for that, or is that just all because you're just trying to explore and kind of push yourself? What are some of the maybe the reasons for you that?
I have a couple of reasons. I think the most the easiest answer to that is that I just have a lot of cameras. I collect still cameras, and also like 8mm and 16mm movie cameras. So I have probably right now close to 30 of them if I count them all together. And that's like a mix of 35mm cameras and medium format 4x5 cameras. I have about 6 Polaroid cameras, different ones. And I just have a bunch of cameras. When I started doing photography, I really got into because basically, I'll tell you the story. I got my first 35mm camera. No, I'll even go back further than that. I got my first Polaroid camera, since that's my favorite form to shoot, at like a flea market. I was in like a thrift store / flea market, and they had this Polaroid, the original box camera that you just pop open, the 600, and it was like $5, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I know what these are. I've never used one before, but
What
it's only $5.
what age was this?
This was the age I was.
Yeah.
This is probably about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Before I started collecting all my cameras, and because like I said, I've only been shooting for about 6 years.
Yeah.
And so this is about 5 years ago, and I was at like a flea market, and I picked up this Polaroid camera. I didn't know where to get film from it, for it or anything like that. So I bought it. I just figured it's a cheap $5. Why not? I didn't even know if it worked or not. At that time, it was Impossible Project who were making Polaroid film, and I just ended up like buying like 3 packs from them. At the time, I think they were like $30 each, and it was like almost $100 for 3 packs of film.
Not cheap.
So yeah, no, it's still not cheap. It's ridiculous. It's being a film photographer is very expensive, which anybody you shoot film. Anybody that shoot film knows it's very, especially if you do Polaroids, because you don't really have a lot of exposures, and it's really expensive. But yeah, I bought film from them, and I waited for it to come in, and when it came in, I looked at a video on YouTube to see how to load it and what to do with it, because I'm very, as even though I talk a lot of stuff about shooting a bunch of different things, I want to know how to do something before I do it instead of just going out and just shooting it. So I always like look at tons of videos and read a bunch of stuff online before I even shoot with the camera, which I know a lot of peers will be like, no, you just got to get out there and shoot with it. I'm like, this film costs a lot of money, man. I need to find out how to use this before I start running through it. But yeah, so I bought that Polaroid camera and I found out how to use it. And I think I went in my backyard at the time and I just popped off what I thought was going to be 10 shots, and I found that it wasn't 10 shots. So you never get 10 shots with Polaroid film. You only get 8. So there's 2 that they're jipping you from. Yeah, so I popped them off.
So
and
if they're listening at all, they need to remedy that.
Yeah, Polaroid, if you're listening, guys, just give us 2 more exposures, man. It's just 2 more. What is the problem? I still don't know why they don't give us the 2. Fuji gives you 10, but Polaroid does. They give you 8. They're cheap, and their film is more expensive. Sorry, but it's true, and you guys know it. But yeah, man. So I once I shot that, I was like, this is, and I've seen like Polaroid film before in my lifetime, and I've seen it in movies, and in Memento, a Polaroid camera is a big plot point in that film. But yeah, so I got it and I just loved the way it looked, and I was like, this is awesome, man. I need to actually shoot something besides just grass and a fence with this camera. And that was like how it started. I started bringing that camera out on photo shoots whenever I would shoot with people back then, which I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just like testing it out. And I loved it so much. I just, started to buy it all the time. And then after that, anytime I found a Polaroid camera somewhere, I bought it. And I think I went through about 10 since doing that. And now I have about 5 or 6. I love them, man. It's my favorite format to shoot in. I can shoot Polaroids all day, any day. They're amazing, and I just love the instant gratification. It's like a in between. It's like a cell phone, but not really. It's like film for a cell phone.
Yeah.
It's like as soon as you shoot it, you got it. You don't have to wait. Well, you got to wait like 10, 15 minutes, but you don't have to wait. To get the film developed. It develops by itself, and
it looks
good. Looks amazing.
Yeah.
It looks so cool, man. So I just really fell in love with that, and that's been my weapon of choice, so to speak, through all my photography. I usually have a Polaroid camera for every shoot I do. I have like tons of film just, in my fridge, and just whenever I know I'm gonna go on a shoot, I pull a pack out, bring my camera with me. And a lot of times when I shoot, I end up liking the Polaroids more than I like the stuff I shoot with my regular camera, which is bad, but that's usually how it works.
When I think of your photography, I think of Polaroid film. So there you can see
awesome.
You obviously have an affinity for it, and I think that comes across. But
thanks, man.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you then was how did you start shooting nudes?
So back then, when I first started shooting people, after I met the young lady and her mom and shot with her, this was probably maybe about 5 or 6 months after that. I had shot maybe like a few girls, because when you first start out and nobody knows you, it's really hard to find models to work with. And a lot of people don't really notice. Like I actually had a local guy here in New Orleans, DM me recently and asked me, how do you start shooting, nude photography with women if you just want to start doing boudoir style stuff. And basically it kind of happened to me by accident. I never meant to, getting to shooting art nudes. I basically had a young lady who I still shoot with to this day hit me up kind of out of the blue on Model Mayhem and say that, she was looking for a local photographer who was looking to, do some nudes, because she was a nudist and she had never taken photos. She never had photos taken of her before that she hadn't taken herself, of her, nude out in public. And when I first heard that, having never shot that before, the first thing that came into my mind was like, you want to go out in public and, like we can go to jail, like, I'm like a clean cut guy. I'm not like a bad boy. So like when I was, even though my work may say otherwise, I'm not a bad boy at all. It's so funny when it's all coming to my head as we speak. It's funny looking at my photography and like all the kinky stuff I do. And I know people probably think I'm like some, some sex pervert or something, but it's like the complete opposite. I'm like a total clean cut guy. But yeah, she wanted to shoot it, and I was like, I don't know if we can do like in public, like where you want to shoot on Canal Street nude. I was thinking like the craziest thing, and she was like, no, we can just go into like a park or something and do it. It doesn't have to be people around. And I was like, yeah, we can definitely do that. That sounds fun and interesting. Let's give it a shot. So we met up for like coffee and talked about, where we're going to shoot at and, how we're going to do it and, what she wanted to do, what I want to bring to it, which was like the first of many coffee house meetings that we usually do with models when you want to meet them, before you shoot. But yeah, we actually went into City Park, which if you live in New Orleans, everybody knows what City Park is, the biggest park that we have here. And we found a little area that, was kind of isolated, and, she took her clothes off and I pulled my camera out and we started shooting. I basically just shot her like it was like she had clothes on. I was just trying to, it wasn't until later on I figured out how to, shoot a woman's body to, make their body look a certain way. This is all stuff I didn't know about this back then. So I was just trying to shoot her normally in the area, nude.
Almost like snapshots in a way.
Yeah, basically like snapshots. Like she would walk down the path with grass, high grass, tall grass on both sides, and I would kind of shoot her in between. And the photos came out great. They were really cool. But I didn't know about exposure back then. I didn't know about, the sun was really harsh, and I didn't know about shooting at different time frames throughout the day. This is all stuff that comes like, like with experience. And, but the photos were still pretty cool for like somebody raw, doing it. And she was happy as hell with them. She loved it. Like she couldn't wait to kind of take her clothes off and just start walking around. It kind of empowered her in a way, which I come to find out now that, most women who do nude photography, that's kind of a thing that they get out of it. It's very freeing and makes them feel, I'm not speaking for them, but in my experience, like I feel like it makes them feel, loose and free and, just kind of on top of the world to be so open like that out in the public. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. And after that, I shot with her a few more times before I shot anybody else nude. And I started to put my work like online on Instagram and like Model Mayhem. And I had certain different models starting to, approach me about doing it. But basically, mostly it's like alternative, artistic models, because normal models don't really want to do nude stuff. They want to do, the most they'll do is like implied. They don't really want to go full nude. But yeah, I mean, it started me down a path, and I thank her for it because it's been really cool. And I don't know if I would have ever met her if I would have ever even got into doing nude photography. It kind of puts you in a different lane if you shoot that type of stuff, just because it's, you're not magazine editorial ready if you do that. So because they don't want that type, maybe some of them would do, but most of them really don't.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird no man's land.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's like once you shoot that, you get put into this category in this lane that it's fine, but it's sometimes it hurts your career if you plan on having a career at this, because a lot of people won't shoot with you if you do nudes, and companies won't hire you if you're looking to do that if you shoot that type of stuff. So it's a great line, man. But I mean, all in all, I think it's great. I love it. I love shooting with women and models, and most of the girls I work with usually become friends of mine. And I know, like, if they have husbands, I know their husbands come on shoots. If they have boyfriends, I know their boyfriends, and we become friends and hang out. And it's a small community that a lot of people, if you're not in it, don't really know about. It's really great, man. I love doing it, and nude photography has kind of catapulted me, I think, in a way. I don't know if it's my work or if it's like, shooting the beautiful women. It's like, I don't know if people follow me because they actually like my photography, or they follow me because they're looking at nude women. So
yeah, it's hard to tell which one it could be.
Yeah, it's just a line you have to be like, well, either way, you guys are cool. Thanks for following me.
Yeah.
Either way, it's awesome,
Well, just to transition here, what did your upbringing look like? Because, you got into nude photography and stuff, and for a lot of people, that can be a pretty taboo subject matter, as you kind of were saying, that it can even limit you and who wants to work with you and stuff like that, because there are a lot of taboos around all of it. What did your upbringing look like? Was your family pretty open in regards to nudity or art or stuff like that, or?
Well, they are definitely not open to nudity at all. I grew up in like a 2-parent household, and my mom and dad, they both worked in the medical field, and my mom and my family in general are very religious. My mom to this day goes to church like 3 times a week. She's really involved with the pastor, and she's really big in the church. So, and I honestly, I'm not big in the church. I'm guess I'm what people call atheist. I don't really believe in religion. So, and I think a lot of it have to do with, my upbringing, because I also went to Catholic school from kindergarten to I think about 7th grade. So most of my young life was, in a Catholic school dealing with nuns and reading the Bible and, getting spankings with rulers and, all of that great fun stuff that, that most of my photo shoots are kind of, inspired by. But, but yeah, so, I think what happened was I spent half of my young life in Catholic school. The other half I went to public school where it wasn't like that. And that kind of changed me a little bit. I think if I look back at it now, because Catholic school was very, by the book. It's very disciplinary. If you don't do what you're going to do, you get punished easily. You go to church all the time. There's mass, just about every other day. And, I think when I grew up, I was against it. I feel like having your kids in like a Catholic school when they're young, they're either going to go 2 ways. One, they're either going to grow up loving religion and want to serve, or they're going to, go completely against it and be like, it was too much as a kid. I don't want this anymore. And I think that's kind of what happened. I think it got jammed down my throat. And when I grew up, I was just totally against it. And now I'm kind of, I'm not with it at all. But if people are religious, I'm not like saying there's anything wrong with that. I believe that everybody has to believe in something that makes them get up in the morning and makes them feel good and think that they're going to somewhere when they die. It helps life get easier. But I don't really believe in that. But also it has a lot to do with my photography, I think, with my dad, because my dad was he was religious. He believed in God, but he wasn't like my mom. My dad only went to church on some days, and other days he was at home watching football on Sunday, so it wasn't a big thing for him. But also he had a big thing to do with me, I think, wanting to be a filmmaker and my style of photography and nudity now, because we were watching movies when I was, as early as I can remember opening my eyes. And my dad never believed in censorship when it comes to television. So I was watching R-rated movies when I was like a little kid. So I remember, like watching like The Exorcist and movies like Fatal Attraction and I'm trying to think of it. Just there's so many movies, man. Like he was big into horror. So, those early horror movies was just people getting killed left and right and women, being naked all the time for no reason. And I really think that had a lot to do with me growing up, because I'm just basically, it doesn't bother me seeing like a nude woman at this point, or a nude guy. Just it's
somewhat
to me,
desensitized.
Yeah, I'm kind of desensitized. Yes. So I mean, growing up with my dad showing me, all these crazy horror movies, and also having my mom, kind of pushing religion on me. Not really pushing it on me. I don't want to make it seem like she was, like the mom in Carrie, just being like, you have to go to the church, and it wasn't like that. My mom was cool. She worked. Her and my dad actually worked a lot. So, ironically, I never really saw them that much. I kind of stayed at my grandparents' house most of my young career, most of my young life. So, I only saw my mom and dad late at night when they would pick me up from my grandparents' house, and we would go home. But on the off days, yeah, I would hang with my dad, man. We would watch movies, tons of them, and we had like tons of VHS tapes. We would record them on TV or whatever and watch them back later. And I think that had a lot to do with me growing up, because now I can, when it comes to the nudity and shooting women, it doesn't bother me. And I kind of look at it a different light, as opposed to people who aren't in that world and wasn't raised the way I am, where they kind of look at nudity and kind of shun it. And I think that a lot of people, especially like, family members and friends and other people, even I do have people that support what I do. A lot of people don't really understand it and think that it's porn, and that really like gets under my skin, because it's like, and I love porn, man. Like I'm a guy, I'm not against porn. I love porn. It's awesome. It is what it is. I love sex workers. You guys rock. But there's a difference between, doing artful nude photography and doing porn, and I think that when most people just see a nude woman in a photo, it's like, oh, he's doing porn. And I know I cross those lines, because everybody doesn't shoot women, using vibrators on themselves and using glass dildos and being blindfolded with their butt in the air. I get it. It's a thin line I'm walking between that aspect of this world and what I do. But I think my upbringing had a lot to do with it, man.
Well, that does kind of segue into a question I had for you as well, and since you kind of touched on it, mentioning pornography, and in regards to your work, how do you define pornography, and how do you see your work in contrast to that? Or like you even said, you sometimes maybe do kind of cross the line, but you, as you stated, you're not trying to do something pornographic.
Let's see. That's such a big question. I think that my work juxtaposed to porn. I mean, only because this is the thing. If nobody ever looked at my work and said it was porn, I would never think of porn when I think about my work. It's only because people say it's porn when they don't really know anything about art and the art world and photography in general, that a lot of people don't understand how big nudity and not just photography, but in paintings and movies and just in art in general, nudity is a big part of that. I think that all the way from back in the day. I've done a few series. Something I'm doing recently where I'm trying to recreate images from some of my favorite painters and drawers, like
Sheila and Klimt.
Yeah, like Sheila and Gustav Klimt and Picasso, like all those guys. They were, I think before their time with their artwork, when they were, drawing and painting nude women, and they were, kind of recluse, and they were shunned by their community, and they had to hide their artwork because, if they let people see it, then they would, go to jail and all these different things. Like the Marquis de Sade, who I read a lot of his books, and I'm influenced heavily by his readings, which I just think just blow my mind. This guy at this time was writing this type of material. I think it's nuts.
Like what is it, Justine
and very cool.
Like Justine and
like Justine and Juliet and 100 Days of Sodom. The fact that he was writing this at that time frame was like it's bananas to me. He was so ahead of the art world and pornography, but also artistic. But yeah, it's a thin line, man. I think that most normal people, which not to say that we're not normal in the art world, but we have a certain artistic edge to us. If you create something and you're an artist, I think you just have a sort of edge about yourself because you're doing something that not a lot of people can do or want to do or are willing to do. So you feel like, crossing a boundary is not a bad thing. Like I'm a big fan of pushing boundaries. I love, controversy and having people, talk about stuff and think about stuff and having people, second guess what they're looking at. So,
is there something that compels you to really want to walk that line? Is there a deeper motivation?
I don't know. It might be, growing up and going to a Catholic school, man, because you weren't supposed to do things there. You just have to follow their rules. And if you don't, you get punished. I mean, I've never really thought about it until this moment, but it might have something to do in my psyche with that. I've always, even though I said earlier, I'm a clean cut, straight and narrow dude. I am, but like everybody else, I have my, my ways. Everybody has some dirty thoughts in their heads and things that they want to do and things that, you try to get out and things that you share, things you don't share. I mean, that's just normal being a human being. But I don't know. I feel like I've just always been drawn to people and artists in general who try to push boundaries, because I just feel like their art is just more impactful and like their art stands the test of time to me. Like I feel like when you're not pushing boundaries, you're just kind of in the swimming pool of other people doing exactly what you're doing. But if you are, being controversial and doing unique things, then your work kind of lives on somehow because there's going to be somebody like me out there, loving it and liking it. So yeah, I don't know if there's any, deep seated thing about it. I just always like, controversial people. Like, for instance, I'm going to say this guy's name and I know a lot of people don't like him right now, but, like Kanye West. I'm a huge Kanye West fan. I know people are hearing this and they're like, "Oh my God, he's the worst. I can't stand Kanye West." And yes, I don't like Kanye West the man because he has his things he's going on.
Yeah.
But I do like Kanye West the artist, because from the beginning of his career, he's been doing things other people weren't doing. I mean, he's pushed boundaries musically and artistically with his music, and it's he's unique, man. He's like one of these guys. We don't have a lot of Kanye West people walking around the planet. You know what I mean? Like, he's kind of his own dude doing his own thing. He doesn't really care, if he pisses people off or if he says something stupid, because he does it a lot. But he's doing his own thing, and I'm not comparing myself to him because I'm not even, on that level or even trying to be him. He was the first name popped in my head when I was thinking about controversial figures.
I'm kind of pushing the line.
Yeah, just pushing the line between being a regular person and being crazy, basically, because that's kind of what it is now. If you're pushing the line and you're doing stuff out of the norm, then you're crazy. You're just you're not being tied down to to society's norms, I guess. So I always like that, man. One of my favorite photographers also is this Japanese photographer called Araki, and you've heard of him, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's
Nobuyoshi Araki.
Yes, his photography is great. I've been a big fan of his for a long time, and you can probably see in a lot of my work with like rope bondage and kink stuff that I'm kind of inspired by a lot of his work, and there's been stuff that's come out about him recently about dealing with models and the way he treats them, and I'm not a fan of that, and very disappointed even though I don't know this guy. But at the same time, his work is strong, and it's controversial, man. Like, everything he does is really pushing boundaries, and it's pretty interesting. I mean, so that type of stuff always just attracts me. I would much rather look at an artist doing controversial work than somebody doing the norm of what they would consider the norm. So yeah, I don't know if my work crosses that boundary, but I feel like some of it does, depending on the reactions I've gotten from people with a lot of it. But yeah, I'm just trying to make stuff that I like that other people kind of like and make them think about, man. I just want people to question stuff and and not just look at things with a closed eye. Look at things with an open eye. I referenced Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. Like, you have to look at everything from all aspects. So
how do you know when you've pushed those boundaries?
I think I can tell, not only by the reactions of from people when they see it, but you kind of.
Do you know when you're doing it, or is it after the fact?
It's definitely after the fact. I never know when I'm doing it. I mean, well, no, that's not true. That's not true. You always know when you're doing something that's a little taboo. Like, if you're shooting a woman just in a bedroom with roses, nude, then that's fine. It's a little, it's nice, it's boudoir, it's kind of pretty. But if you're shooting a woman nude in a bedroom with roses, and she has like her mouth, tied up or something, and there's, like a glass dildo next to her that she has in her hand, that's more taboo than just shooting her on the bed. There's like, when you're kind of pushing buttons with people based on what people think is not normal, and sex toys and anything kink and bondage is stuff that people don't really, equate to and don't really like. And that's one of my main things. I really want people to be more open about sexuality in a way, and just, bring, I'm not saying I'm trying to bring stuff into the bedroom, because that's not true, but I just want to open people's eyes about dealing with different stuff. Like sex toys are good, man. Like, more people should use them in their everyday life. And if you don't, you're kind of missing out, in my opinion.
You mentioned kind of drawing attention to certain aspects of sexuality. Are you intentionally trying to do that, or is it something conscious, or is it something subconscious? And what ultimately are you trying to say?
I think honestly, it's a mix of all of that. It's like you're aware of the sexuality when you're doing it, because it's, there's a nude, person, woman, as your subject, and nudity in general is just, it kind of, I don't want to say it's sexualized, but it is. As if anybody sees a nude body, like the big thing with Instagram right now is, there's a big thing about censorship going on because people's photos are getting removed because of, a half nipple being shown, or just if a woman isn't completely shaven and there's like some hair like right below her belly button that you're showing, your photo gets removed. So I feel like sexuality is a big part of the world we live in now. And here in America, man, it's kind of like we're nobody wants to see it or know it, even though it's everywhere. It's on billboards and magazines, it's on commercials, it's on TV shows. Sexuality is everywhere, but everybody wants to act like it's not real and it's bad. But I think with my stuff, I just want to show that it's not bad. I'm not trying to sexualize my models, but I definitely want them to be, to show that, beauty is not only, nudity and sex, but beauty is just, the spine of a woman's back, like, beauty is like the lips, on a woman, like beauty is, her hand, holding her side. Like there's tons of things that can be sexy and doesn't have to be about genitalia. I mean, women are beautiful. I've always thought that in my life. And I think that's why I've kind of come down to this side. I mean, all of my films that I've shot that are short films are based around women. I've always had strong women as role models in my life. My mom's like the best, most awesome woman I know. My grandmother was great. All my aunts are great. All of the friends I have who are girls are great. Guys are cool too. I love my dude friends as well, and my uncle, and I love my dad. But it's just, women are just, I feel like are smarter than men in a weird way. They just have an intuition that we'll never be able to comprehend. But yeah, man, I just want to,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just down those lines. I wanted to know if your work has given you any insight into sexuality.
Absolutely. I think that because before doing this, before being a photographer and working with, so many models and so many women over the years, I was just I would say a normal guy going about my life, dating women and just trying to be whatever the guy I can be. And now I kind of, after talking and having so many conversations with women on these sets, and and most of the time it's them in panties, or and not all the time. I'm just saying, like, if we're in the middle of shooting and they have panties on and no top, and we just start talking, then you're having a conversation with a beautiful woman who's half naked in front of you, and it's not even coming to your mind that they're like that, because it's just they're a person and you're just talking with them, and you guys are having a fun conversation about Real Housewives of Orange County or some shit. Like it doesn't matter. But I definitely feel like after being a photographer and shooting with so many women, that I have my female brain inside that I would say I'm probably about 80 to 85% man, and the rest is like a little bit in my brain woman. That's weird to say. I know some women probably gonna hear that and think it's stupid, but
no, I think it's true. I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I've talked to so many women, had so many conversations about different things, and I feel like I have a little bit of more insight than the normal guy who's just going about his day, into dealing with women. And, and as you would know, after shooting with girls, that there's a lot of stuff you have to deal with that you wouldn't normally deal with. Like, recently I had a photo shoot with a model, and, the day of shooting that we were supposed to do some fun stuff. And she told me the day of shooting that she had just got her period, and we couldn't shoot the type of stuff we wanted to shoot. So that's not something you would normally hear, in everyday life, unless you're married or you have a girlfriend and she gets on her period. But it's just stuff like that you hear that and you have compassion, and you're like, man, being a guy, man, being a woman is it's like the toughest job on the earth, man. Like, being a guy, we don't have to worry about once a month getting a period. It's like, it's so tough. They have it so tough, and it's just, we got off easy being men. I feel like, we go about life doing what we do. We don't have a fucking care in the world, and these women have to worry about stuff nonstop and have to deal with us on top of it. So
yeah, and a lot of the embarrassment awesome, even of that, because that definitely happens.
I thought about, after I got off the phone with her and we were talking, in my mind I was like, man, that had to be so embarrassing for her just to tell me that, you know what I mean? And
yeah, which it shouldn't be.
Right, exactly, and it shouldn't be. And I made her feel as comfortable about it as possible. I was like, oh, it's happened before. No worries. Let's still shoot. We'll work around it. We don't have to do that type of stuff today. It's cool. So, you have to. It's just the fact that she had to tell me that. It's like I don't have to go to work and then, are going to do something with somebody and be like, oh, we can't do what we want to do today. I have my period. It's like, it's so weird. And, not that it's happening, but it's just for them to have to say that. It's just strange. And I let you know how tough they are, man, because women are some tough creatures, and that's why they have babies and we don't, because it's just we wouldn't be able to deal with it. I don't think if we had to have kids, population would die. It'll be like children of men. There would be no more kids being born.
You mentioned being able to sit and have a conversation with
Yeah.
a model that you work with, and they're not wearing any clothes, and you're able to just have a normal conversation.
Yes.
That is something that doesn't exist very often. And
No, not at all.
And to me, I always find those moments to be a very kind of comforting thought, because you're very
Absolutely.
much present with that person. And this is one of the things that I think that where a lot of people could gain a certain healthier perspective in doing is being able to see people in that respect, where they just don't see someone who's naked, and focusing on that. And you can
Right.
very much have a real connection, and it's irrelevant sort of the surroundings and the situation. And so the way that I sort of think about it in my mind is society would be healthier if it could exist and understand that sort of perspective. And I
agree.
think doctors, for example, we when we think of a doctor, we
Mhm.
know that they can sort of separate those things, or
Right, exactly.
we kind of trust that they do. I think being an artist, it's kind of a similar way, is that there's a professionalism and there's just a way that you start seeing it that is
Yeah.
different than how you did.
I agree.
Do you remember that shift as an artist? Did it ever kind of occur to you like, wow, here I am in this situation, whereas so many years ago, or as maybe, when I was younger or something, I would have never been able to do this. And this is maybe a bizarre situation, and it shouldn't be, but it's something that I even appreciate. Do you remember a kind of mental shift in that?
If I think back, I don't quite remember the moment that happened, but because I think it just happened gradually, like it wasn't like a moment where I just kind of started happening. Like it was, I think just being around so many women and having them feel comfortable around me, enough to be able to be nude and not worry about, what this guy's thinking, or is he thinking, like sexual thoughts about me, like just being able for them to trust me enough to be okay, for that to happen. I think is just a fantastic thing. It makes me feel great as an artist and as a photographer that I get the trust of the women that I shoot with. Because I think that's a big deal. And I think in this day and age, there's a lot of photographers out there that are taking advantage of girls and their trust and using it against them. But I don't think I can recall a specific moment, Grant. I think it's just something that kind of just gradually happened. I think now it's almost to the point, because you've worked with so many different people that now it's not even a second thought. It's almost like we'll be talking about something or eating food, and then we'll shoot in between, because it's when I'm shooting, it's also like, like having, a conversation. So it's not like just constantly shooting throughout. It's more like we're talking, we're shooting, then we're talking, then we're shooting, then we're talking, it's kind of like, most of the time, some of my favorite photos I end up getting are ones that are accidents, where the model doesn't even know that I'm shooting them. That doesn't happen often, but those are like my favorite. And I try to capture those when I can, because I feel like that's like the most honest portrayal of the person that I'm shooting at the time. But yeah, I don't think I can remember quite when that happened, man. It's just something that gradually grew into, into going on and with their trust. And now it's almost like second nature, maybe not when you first meet somebody because they don't know you that well. But, with most of my friends who I shoot, models locally who I've shot a bunch of stuff with them, it's almost like they don't even care. We'll just have a conversation and be talking and shooting and laughing, and it wouldn't even bother them if they're nude or something like that. So yeah, I think that answers it the best I can. Sorry, I couldn't give you more about that.
No, that's great. I can't remember the shift for me personally either,
Right,
but it
right.
occurs to you, or I'm saying myself, it occurs to me every once in a while how kind of weird this is ultimately, and
Absolutely.
how I wish it wasn't weird. And a
Right.
lot of times I don't even really know how to communicate that sort of reality. Like I said, the best example is sort of, when you go to a doctor and they obviously see you differently, and that's the
Right.
assumption as well. They just see you differently.
Right.
And I'm sure you get this question all the time. I know it's something that I have. I know even models that I've talked to and friends, they say one of the biggest questions is, well, do you guys have sex afterwards?
All the time.
And so the reality is that what we just talked about, the situation where you're actually sitting there and you're having a conversation, and it's a normal conversation that you would have with a friend in what is considered a normal environment, and that's what's going on.
I would actually love to speak on that. That's the number one question I get from people all the time. Are you, I mean, mostly guys, girls never ask me. I don't think I've ever been asked that question one time from a woman, which is pretty funny and ironic if you really think about it. It's always guys, 'cause that's the one thing on guys' mind. Like, oh, you're shooting with all these beautiful women, man. You got to be like, hooking up with them, having sex with them, sleeping with them all the time, but they're naked. You have like vibrators out. They have rope around them. Like, you got to be sleeping with them. Like, how many have you slept with? Like, it's just, I get that so much, and it drives me nuts. I'm so tired of that question. Where it's like it's not about sex, man. Like, you don't understand. Like, it's super professional every single time I'm on a photo shoot, even if it's with a friend of mine. Like, even if we're just kicking back, having fun, taking some snaps, it's still, I try to set a professional atmosphere. You know what I mean? Like, and even to this day, we were just talking about like talking with the girls, with them being topless or being nude. And even to this day, just because of how I am, and like I consider myself a gentleman, when a girl's like taking her clothes off around me, I turn around, I look the other way. You know what I mean? Like, till this day, I still do that. And so it's like, I'm so tired of people asking that question. There are photographers out there who do have sex with their models. There's a lot of them. And it's pretty sad because, it's like they have to, act like a photographer in order to sleep with women. I think it's, terrible, and they're assholes. Need to stop doing that. But I think it's ridiculous, man. Like, we're trying to create something here. It doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter. It's not like a porn set where, and even porn sets are professional. I don't even want to talk bad about porn sets, because most of those are really professional, and it's like business. You go there, you shoot your scene, you get paid, and you go home, But with this type of stuff, just because we're shooting, what people would consider sexual content or whatever, it's like there's no sex going on, man. Like, it's just, most of the time these models have their boyfriends on set, they have their husbands on set, there's other girls on set who are their friends. It's like, I like to create an environment when I'm shooting that's kind of like fun and and loose. So there's music playing usually in the background. Every now and then we'll have food, like pizza or something, whatever, candy. I just want people to be comfortable, in this setting, especially when I know I'm shooting a scene that I think, shooting photos that I think are going to be, of a sexual nature. I'm like, well, I need to make sure this young lady is as comfortable as she can, so she feels okay doing what we're about to do. So yeah, man, it's never about sex. It's never been about sex. I've never actually shot with a model and thinking, oh, are we going to hook up later? That's never happened. So it's always really professional, man. And people need to stop thinking that it's always just because there's a nude woman around that it's just about hooking up, because it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. It's kind of obnoxious, and it's a little sad that is what ultimately people, well, especially mostly men, like you said, what they go back to and how they want to think of it, and it's very one dimensional and very limiting. And I think that's sort of the saddest part of all of it, is that you're missing a whole kind of world because that's all you can fixate on is just this one element. You're missing a connection with the person. You're missing a level of intimacy that is about establishing a relationship. And when I say intimacy, I'm not talking sexual intimacy. I'm talking.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah, and having that emotional connection and being able to have friendships. And I
agree, man.
That's what makes so much of life worth living. Unfortunately, like you said, some people do. They become photographers to try and sleep with people, and
it happens a lot, man. It really sucks for the rest of us because it just shines a big light on the thing that we're trying not to do, and it makes the models more suspicious, and it makes a lot of them stop doing it when that type of thing happens to them. There was an incident recently here in the city with something like that happened. I'm not going to really go into it, but if you follow me or anybody that lives here, you probably heard about it, maybe not. But yeah, I mean, there's, and it's a tough thing, man, when you find out that, photographers out there that you may know of, if you like their work or something like that, and they've done something, that's not good and appalling and, and pretty disgusting. It just makes you just look and be like, man, it's sad, dude. Because why do you have to do that, man? And again, coming from a guy like me who shoots really, erotica, style photography most of the time, on one hand, I can understand how some people would think that, you're doing stuff with these girls because they're using vibrators, they're nude, you're getting close-ups of them, and you're doing all this weird. And I'm like, okay, your brain naturally being a guy, you would think, okay, this guy's probably touching these girls or doing something with them. But I just want people to open their minds, man, and not just think about everything in such a way like that. Just try to look at the art in it. Like we're trying to create, special stuff here and just make people be, get caught up in the moment. And if you're not even realizing that there's a moment, I don't know if we're doing something wrong as the artist trying to create, or if it's just them, the people not really picking up on it, because it's pretty sad, man. And I think that people should open their minds a little more, especially guys, and stop being so damn, stupid for a lack of better words. And just grow up, man. Just guys, grow the fuck up, please. Just grow up, guys. Come on, man.
So what I guess would be the so I'm just thinking in terms of work being represented properly, or how you want it to be represented. What is, I guess, one of the things that people must know in order to see your work properly?
I think that people really need to, kind of like I just said, taking off of the last answer, is just open your minds, man, and open your eyes. And I'm not saying that my work is life changing, or I'm this amazing artist that's doing, work that every single person on the planet needs to see. I just, if you're following me, or you see my work, and if it makes you think about, anything, like, you're like, man, this is really greatly composed. I wonder how he got that shot. Or, man, that model, the expression on her face is I just want to know what she's thinking. It's like, those are the type of questions I like when I see other people's work. So I want people to look at that, to look at my work and say, I want them to look at it. And even if it's something on the sexual side, something, like kink erotica, and just, try to figure out what was I thinking when I was shooting that, what I mean? And I don't mind that. If you want to know, if you see something and you don't like it, I like that too. If you don't like what you see, you think it's ridiculous, and I'm doing terrible work, then awesome. Let me know why you think I'm doing terrible work. What would you rather do? I love questions. I love for people to see something and question it and want to, wonder, why they do that, or how they do that, or what were his intentions, because I think that art is very, people can take from it what they want. So, when you're putting stuff out there for the world to see, like we're doing on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and Tumblr and all these different things, anybody can see our work. I think that we're looking for people, to want to question what we're doing, and, not always just admire it. I don't want people to just, be on my ass and be like, oh, your work is great. It's beautiful. I love it. And that's cool. I'm not saying I don't want that, because you want people to appreciate your stuff. But I also want people to, to make me work hard and push me. I want somebody to see a photo shoot and be like, man, that one's pretty cool. But that last one you did, wow, you blew my mind with that one. And I'll, in my head, I'll be like, damn, this one really isn't that good. Shit, I got to work harder next time. Like that's how I am, man. Like, I like criticism. So, I want people to challenge themselves, to want, to look at art and more and get something from it, and just enjoy it. We're doing this because we like it. We're not doing it because we hate it. We make photos and, and create stuff because we love doing it. We're creative people, and we want people to take that work in and just anything, a bad feeling, a good feeling, an okay feeling, whatever. Just as long as you're feeling something about the work, I think that's great. So
especially that just goes beyond just it being something sexual.
Exactly. As long as you're just not, one of the douchebags saying you want to come on set and hold like a light for me or something. As Like I swear the next time I hear somebody say I'm going to elbow the shadow, I swear it's the worst. I get that. I get that at least twice, 3 times a week. People just want to just let me come on set and hold a light, man. Let me be your backup camera. Like, no, dude, just shut the fuck up. No, I don't want nobody. I don't want you there with that attitude at all. I've never had anybody else come on set with me as far as helping me out because I just feel like that's going to attract attention, and I don't want the model to feel uncomfortable. So that would never happen. But yeah, man, you just want people to to take in what you're given and and give you something from it. I mean, we're all creating stuff for a reason, and we're putting it out there for the world to see. And whether you like it or hate it, let us know. Either way, I'm open to concerns and praise. So I love it all, man.
At what point because you mentioned you got into bondage, and you mentioned Iraqi.
Yes.
At what point though did bondage become a consistent theme in your work?
Well, bondage started outside of photography. Actually, it kind of I had always I had saw rope stuff before, and it was always kind of interesting and cool. But I actually was dating somebody who was kind of into it. She kind of was my first person I worked with as far as like trying ties and all of that fun stuff. I think I mentioned it to a friend of mine that I was doing it, and I asked her would she want to, be like a subject if I practice on her and tied, and she was down for it. And I loved the photos that we took that first time so much. Just like with the nude way I started, just like with the shooting models the way I started. My mind works at a pace where I feel like if anything is interesting to me and I try and I like it, I like consume myself with it. So after that, I just really, started shooting a lot. So I started to break into all my photographs, which was kind of overdrive at the time. Now it's kind of like I do it every once in a while. But I was so into it at that time, I started doing it with all the models, and it was fun and it was great. But I feel like I kind of oversaturated myself with it, and I was kind of using it too much. So now I kind of use it sparingly on certain shoots. But yeah, I think that it was definitely a big part in growing with my whole kink bondage side of photography that I do, because rope is a big part of that.
How many years ago did you start doing that?
That was probably about maybe two and a half years ago, probably when I started doing that type of work. Because before that, it was just like shooting normal stuff and then shooting nude work, and then I kind of got into dealing when I was dating this one person. She kind of opened my mind up to that type of stuff, and even I kind of knew I was aware of it, but it's different when you're actually dating somebody who's into it, and you're learning more about it from them, and you're doing research on it because it's just fun, and you start to incorporate that stuff into your photography, and you find out that there's a whole community of people out there that enjoy that type of stuff, and it's real welcoming, man. All of the rope riggers out there and the kink bondage models out there, you guys are awesome. I love all of you. And it's a great community of people. They're all great and wonderful. It's just fun, man. I think doing that stuff is great. It's challenging because you want it to be artistic and look well on camera, but you also want it to be the right way. Like I'm not in any type of way a professional rope rigger. I would never even consider myself half of a professional. I know very few rope ties, and I kind of stick with what I know. I'm not like one of the guys who are like hanging girls from trees and doing like super intensive expert style stuff. Which that stuff's great. I love all of that. I love seeing that type of stuff, but that's just not me. I haven't got there.
Try to keep it more simple.
Yeah, I try to keep it more simple because mine mostly, I try to look at my rope work and my kink stuff as like, it works better for photography. Like a lot of my stuff, I use like color ropes a lot of times, and a lot of my kink bondage stuff is color based. So it's like I have red ones and purple and blue. So it's mostly to add to the atmosphere of the shot I'm trying to get. So it's almost like I'm making sure that what I do looks good on the camera, So a lot of my ties are more toward helping the image and also not taking too much away from the model, Like there's sometimes you can do so many ties on the girl where it's like you start to lose her, and now it's just this woman that's just bound up. I still want people.
It just looks like a big knot, like the
exactly, and that's cool. I mean, again, I'm not knocking anybody that does that. That's great.
You still want the focus to be the model. You don't want it to be how good you are at tying.
exactly. I don't want the focus to be the rope. I want the focus to be this person tied up in the rope, So it's different, like there's always a method to the stuff I'm trying to do, and people don't get that obviously unless I tell them. And my online persona is like, people really don't even know what I look like mostly because I never take photos of myself. And it's funny because I get this all the time when people haven't met me. They always think I'm like a white guy, which is really funny, but I'm actually this really gigantic black dude with a huge beard. And I get that so much. I don't know if it's my voice or the way I talk or the way I act, but most people think I'm like a white nerdy guy, which is funny. I mean, there's a little bit of that in me. I am definitely a nerd, but no, I'm like a huge. If you see me walking down the street, you'll think I'm like a football player. Probably. It's pretty funny.
I had a question going back. You mentioned that you lived in California. Did you live in LA?
I lived in LA. I lived in Burbank.
And then you also lived in, did you say Houston?
I didn't live in Houston. I kind of stayed in Houston for a little while. Like I've traveled around a bit throughout the country over these last like 10 years, kind of like post Katrina. Because I was, I like traveling. I like living in different places. The longest place I lived in was Florida and LA, though.
What took you to those locations? Was there something in particular, and what eventually brought you back?
Well, Florida, I moved to Florida to go to film school. Like I said before, I went to the Art Institute there in Fort Lauderdale. And I basically started a new life out there. I went out there kind of with nothing, and went to school and, worked after school was over. I got my degree. I worked in the commercial movie music industry down there for a little while as, like a camera assistant kind of. And I worked at a camera rental house for a while because of friends. And that was pretty great. That's kind of where my love for cameras came from, because I was able to deal with like movie cameras on a daily basis and learn the ins and outs of them and how to check lenses and how to clean cameras and film cameras and digital cameras, all that fun stuff. So that was great for a while. And I worked on a lot of music videos as, like a second camera assistant, AC, music videos, commercials, a few short films. I worked as a post-production editor on some low budget feature films out there in Fort Lauderdale and Miami. So I had a really good life out there in Florida, and with friends and everything was going great. And I decided I want to kind of step my game up and move to the place I always wanted to live at, which was California. And I moved out there with some friends. Basically, we kind of went out there on a whim, and I had a little money saved up, but it just, California is great. I love California. It's a great place for anybody that wants to be in the movie industry, anything like that, because there's so much stuff to do there as far as that field. But California was real short-lived for me, man, because it just didn't work out, how I thought it would work out.
It's expensive too.
It's super expensive. You don't know that till you live there. It's like, to afford rent and anything else, you have to make a lot of money. So I loved California and I didn't like California.
Were you working on any particular projects out there, or was it kind of trying to make it in the movie business, or what was kind of the story behind that?
It was trying to make it in the movie business. Like I went out there on a hope and a dream, just saying like, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna work in the field. I kind of had I had some editing movies on my resume, and being a camera operator and a camera assistant. I had all this stuff on my resume, and I figured, going out there, it'll be easy just to, get jobs and just walk right into fucking Paramount or Universal and start working. And that is not the case. Anybody out there that's done that or tried to do that, you would know it's a really, really, really tight knit group of people in LA who all work together. And if you're not in there in crowd, you're not going to get work. And there's also tons of people that do exactly what you do. So you have to stand out. You have to, know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And it's very, I think LA is a depressing place, man. Like as wonderful as it is and as beautiful as the weather is there, it's, if you don't have, people out there, friends or family, it can be really lonely and depressing, man. I think that's what happened to me. I got really depressed there because, the friends I went out there with, we kind of had a falling out and it just didn't work out well. So I kind of went out there and I ended up being by myself, and it just didn't work out, man. So after that, I kind of came back, I drove, through the country a little bit, and I ended up, coming home to New Orleans with my tail between my legs, broke with no money. and no job and not knowing what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I was like, I had it so good in Fort Lauderdale. Like, and I also felt like I really could have went back to Fort Lauderdale, but I was kind of like, I felt like I kind of ruined that, and I didn't want to go back. I was kind of afraid to go back because I didn't want people to say, "Oh, you went to LA for a little while, you couldn't make it, now you're back here." So I kind of just, and it was stupid of me, but I was like really young at the time, so it is what it is. But now it's I came up to New Orleans with my tail between my legs and not knowing what was going to happen, and I kind of wound up being a photographer. So it's like, I don't think I ever would have been a photographer if I would have stayed in LA or stayed in Fort Lauderdale. I'd have been doing different things, like Katrina really changed my life. I lost my dad like a week after Katrina. He kind of passed away, had a heart attack because of stress.
I'm sorry about that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it was a while ago, but I mean, I was also in a terrible car accident like a week after that, so I almost died in a car accident. So it's almost like,
oh, wow.
2005 was a tough year. Me and my family, we lost everything. We had to leave New Orleans and live with family members in Baton Rouge, which is the capital of Louisiana. We had to move there for a while. We kind of stayed in the country.
Yeah,
and
I had a job offer in Baton Rouge at one point, and turned it down.
Baton Rouge is fine, but it's not it's not New Orleans. It's very there's a city part of it, but the part I was living in with me and my mom after my dad passed was really country. It was like my mom's aunt. We were staying at like her house, and they had a TV that only had like 4 channels on it, and they listened to the radio all day long with news, and it was real country living, man. There's like horses and cows walking the streets, and it was like, I was dying.
That's a change of pace.
Yeah, man. It was a real change of pace. I was just dying to get out of there. Every day we would leave and go to the city part of Baton Rouge because we were like, man, we're just not used to this country living.
Well, how old were you at this point? If you don't mind me asking, you don't have to answer that question if you don't want. But
no, I can answer, no problem. That was 2005. I'm 34 now, so 2000. I'm terrible at math. I had to be like 21, maybe 20, 22, around that age. I had just graduated college from here. I had a degree. I have multiple degrees that I'm not doing anything with, honestly.
What is the other degree?
The other degree was in computer networking. I got an associate's degree from this tech school, in computer network, and learn how to like network computers in like an office setting and have them all connected and all that fun stuff with PCs. It's all terrible. I hated it, but I did it because I thought, that's where the world was going with computers, which I was
Make
right.
some money,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. And I just literally graduated that year in 2005, and I had a big job offer with a company, and I was going to start working with them, making a lot of money. And then Hurricane Katrina happened, and literally tossed my life upside down.
And this is even after you came back from LA.
No, LA is afterwards.
This is afterwards.
Yeah, okay. This is Katrina happened. I moved to Fort Lauderdale for film school.
Oh, okay.
Then I moved to LA. Then I traveled the country a little bit. Then I came back home in New Orleans. So basically, Katrina was the jumping point of my whole artistic endeavor, which we never really talked about. But yeah, Hurricane Katrina happened, and me and my family were trapped in an attic in the lower Ninth Ward for like almost 2 days.
Oh man!
And it was that's actually the reason why I want to be a filmmaker. I never wanted to be a filmmaker. I just always liked watching movies. And after Katrina happened and my dad died and I was in that car accident, I was kind of sitting, by myself a lot, just thinking about, life. I was like, man, do I really want to, set up computer networks the rest of my life? Is that going to be what I really want to do with myself? Seeing how all this tragedy has happened, and, I need to do something that I like to do, something that's fun. And I thought about it for a long time, and I was like, the thing I love more than anything else is watching movies. So maybe I should do something with movies, in the movie industry. And that sent me down the path of going to art school and getting a filmmaking degree and figuring out what I want to do. I didn't find out till I was in film school that I actually wanted to be a director. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just remember the feeling I had the first time I was on set of my own movie, my own short film, making it, that I had an adrenaline rush and a thrill that I never felt before. And still to this day, nothing matches that feeling, man, of being being on your movie set and directing people and hearing people speak the words that you wrote down in your head. It's like,
that's it right there for you. That's
it, man. That's my thing. I mean, as much as I love photography, and I really do, making movies is like my thing. It's what I feel like I'm supposed to do. If anybody's supposed to do anything, I feel like that's where, I can do something that can be uniquely my own and have a voice, even though photography does it as well. But I just feel like movies I don't get a feeling like I get from anything else when I make movies. It's just that simple. And I know that because people have told me they just see how happy I am when I'm on set. It's a side of me that they never see in normal day life. And I'm like, yeah, it's just because I'm loving creating stuff, man. It's beautiful. We're making stuff out of thin air, like somebody thought about something, somebody put it on paper, and now somebody's making it. It's like, you can't make that shit up. It's great. But yeah, man, it's kind of how it happened.
So that time period, you said like 2005, where Katrina happened and your father passed away, you were in a car accident, all these very kind of traumatic things that are really difficult to overcome psychologically was really what kind of propelled you to start following the path that you've been on.
Yeah, I think it really helped me as far as being an artist. I mean, I always was artistic, I think, because I drew a lot when I was a kid, and my dad painted, so I drew. I always loved. I'm a big music head, so I love listening to music. I never created music. I was in like my school band for a little while, but I never really created music. But I love music, and I've always loved anything artistic. Growing up, I was a big comic book nerd, so I loved comic books, and yeah, man. Once I felt like I wanted to do something, creatively, I don't think I've ever looked back since then. I mean, to this day, I have a normal job, but even with that job, I'm a camera operator. I'm basically, my day-to-day job is I'm an AV technician. For people that don't know what that is, it's basically audio video technician. I set up, monitors and cameras and video gear and speakers and microphones for like conferences and concerts and stuff like that. And I'm also a camera operator for those things. So even in my day-to-day life and my job, I still have a little bit of, artistic, creative stuff of what I'm doing.
You're connected to that world, man, still.
Yeah, still, it kind of just happened. I mean, I work freelance, so I'm even to this day, I've never, I don't have like a 9-to-5 job that I'm working every day, and I don't knock that because that's life. People, you got to do what you got to do to pay the bills. But I think ever since I've been down this path of doing this type of stuff, I can't really see myself doing anything else. Like I can't see myself working in the office, wearing a suit now because of who I am and what I do. I can't really see it. I mean, and again, I don't knock people that do that. If you do that, that's great. Keep doing it, keep it professional. But yeah, for me, I'm just, I went down this path after Hurricane Katrina. It really kind of changed me, and I haven't been the same since, man.
What was one of the big lessons that you learned at that time period then?
That life is short. I mean, I know that's a typical answer that most people give, but
there's a difference though between knowing life is short intellectually and like knowing it to your core though.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's just, when you're around something, that drastically changes not only you, but your family, your community, your city, for the rest of their lives. I mean, I think after Hurricane Katrina, I mean, the only people that kind of, can relate to that type of stuff is, people that lived in New York when the 9/11 happened, like these people that live when tsunamis hit, like people that live through tornadoes when they just destroy entire, communities. Like there are certain things that happen, in our lives and in the world that, they change you forever, man. There's nothing you can go back from that. I mean, me and my family were actually a lot stronger now than we were then. My mom and my aunt, they don't really get along too well. They never did. My mom's the oldest sister and my aunt's the youngest daughter. And they've always kind of been at each other's odds since they were kids, vying for affection for my grandmother and the grandparents. And through Hurricane Katrina, they really bonded because we were all together and we had to depend on each other. And they became closer as a result of that. And I feel like we all have. I mean, once you live through something like that with your family, it makes you stronger, man. I mean, I can just recall to this day, like hearing, people screaming, from other houses because, the water was coming through and there's nothing you can do about it. You had to go up and just hope that the water stopped. And there's visuals I can remember now, being a photographer and an aspiring filmmaker, that I look back and I'm like, man, if I ever get a chance to make my Hurricane Katrina movie, which is actually the reason why I wanted to be a filmmaker. I felt like our story and what happened to us is so visually compelling and storytelling wise, as a family, to go through something like that. We went through so many different obstacles with that certain that event that I look back at it now. I just remember like being saved by the Coast Guard and being shipped, going in the boat, just me and like my dad, and we're seeing, the church that I went to as a kid, that had a cross on the top of the building. The water's so high that you don't see the church. All you see is the cross from the church poking up on top of the water.
It's kind of surreal.
It's completely surreal, man. Like seeing, like, going in a boat through areas that you walk through to get through school and not seeing buildings anymore, just seeing trees over water. It's an amazing visual, man. I think back to those moments. I'm like, if I ever get to make this movie, I hope I do one day. It's going to be visually stunning and gripping at the same time. I hope people really, connect with it, because it's mostly a story about, family, but I'm not gonna talk more about that. But yeah, man, I mean,
well, if there's any producers out there that are listening, you can get a hold of Sidney.
Yes, please do. I have what I think is a golden movie in the making, that hasn't been made yet, even with the Hurricane Katrina movies that they have done. I think that this story is more Steven Spielberg-esque, of family dealing with a horrific event, basically, and having to get through it and
live through it. Yeah, firsthand.
I lived through it, yeah. I lived through it, and I've been working on a script for years. I haven't finished it yet. Hopefully, whenever it's done, I can get out there to some people and see if anybody wants to help me make it. But yeah, man. So I honestly don't remember how we got down this path, but it's been awesome talking about that, because I don't think I've talked about Katrina in a while.
Well, yeah, and it obviously has to be such an important, like you said, it's such a pretty pivotal moment in your story.
Yeah, definitely.
To me, that's really fascinating, and it's I think a lot of times those difficulties and those hurdles, they very much help form who we are. And I know I've been through difficult personal things as well, and they very much become a reference point. And like you said, right, when you realize how short life is, when you really realize how short life is, it really causes you to kind of turn in on yourself and say, what am I doing? And it kind of can very much propel you into a whole other direction, that if that maybe tragedy didn't happen, you would be, like you said, doing networking computers, which, like you said, there's nothing wrong with that, but
oh yeah, I would be really wealthy right now, but I would be really miserable probably.
Well,
I'll be able to pay my rent, no problem, but I'll be miserable.
We're good at that as Americans, being wealthy, unhappy people. But
absolutely.
You mentioned though that earlier that your dad painted.
Mm-hmm.
What did he paint? What were some of the things that he did?
I think he did mostly like landscapes and stuff like that. I actually I've only seen a few of his paintings in my lifetime, because he didn't do it at all when once I was born, I guess. My mom has told me that that he used to do it. I know he used to draw and paint in school, and I think I've only seen maybe like 3 or 4 of his actual paintings that he actually kept around, that was like at his parents' house, I think. But I think one of them was like a painting of like a house and like a backyard or something like that. It was almost like a landscape style. And one of them was like a typical like flower on a vase or something like that, on a vase. So I haven't seen a lot of his stuff. I just know from my mom that he did it. So I wish I'd have been able to see more of that from him, but he was kind of caught in that the world of, I have a family, I have a job, I have to do what I got to do. And my dad was a quiet guy. He didn't really talk a lot. So it's funny because I felt like, and it's kind of sad to think about it, but I kind of felt like I knew him more, as I got older than I did when I was younger, because he wasn't really open with me when I was a kid. Me and him kind of became more friends the older I got, because we were able to talk about stuff and relate to things. And
kind of man to man.
Yeah, kind of man-to-man stuff, because I don't think he kind of really knew how to be like a father. I don't think nobody really does. It's kind of something you do. I don't have any kids, but I just, I know enough dads and fathers, and I think that you're never prepared to be a dad, you're never prepared to be a mom. It's just something that happens, and you do it, and you make mistakes.
Along the way,
yeah, you make mistakes, and you figure it out, and you just do what you got to do to make sure those kids are are living and breathing and eating food. So. And yeah, with him, it was more, I didn't get a chance to see that artistic side of him, so to speak, but I can just, you can just tell, like, I know like some of his favorite movies are, like he really, he was also in the military. So some of his favorite movies were like Apocalypse Now, and he really loved Forrest Gump because he thought it was hilarious.
Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket, yeah, definitely. That was my first introduction to Kubrick, was watching Full Metal Jacket with my dad.
Yeah.
Watching stuff like The Matrix with him, and Jurassic Park, which is probably one of my favorite movies. I still remember to this day watching Jurassic Park in the theater with him, and that being like the best experience I've ever had in a theater, watching the movie, being a kid, loving dinosaurs and dragons.
I have a Jurassic Park T-shirt. When I meet you, I'll wear it.
Oh, dude, where am I? We'll wear them together. We'll be like Jurassic Park bros. I have one too, dude. Yeah, like I'm a huge fan of like dinosaurs and dragons. So anything that involves dragons or dinosaurs, count me in. I love them. And Jurassic Park, I think, is one of the best, most magical movies ever made. And yeah, man. I mean, so my dad was awesome. I mean, he was just a quiet dude who took care of his family and paid the bills and worked really hard. Had like 2-3 jobs and.
Wow.
And took care of his family. He was a family guy. He loved family. I mean, he was his favorite thing was just being home, eating food, watching TV, hanging out, and just having a laugh. So my dad was awesome. I wish he wouldn't have, obviously, you wish he wouldn't have passed when he did, but he did. So hopefully I can let his legacy kind of live on and keep the Manuel name going strong, hopefully. And I think he would be proud, man. That's one of my biggest regrets, is that he never got to see me, make a movie, or he never got to even know that I wanted to make a movie, because I think that he would have really liked that, he would have really appreciated and enjoyed seeing his son, on set making a film, My mom is great, and I love her to death. She's my favorite person in the world. But she's not like that. Like, I have a different connection with my mom than I do with my dad. So she loves anything I do. I can bake cookies, and she'll think they're the best cookies ever made. That's how my mom is. She's great.
It's always good to have that cheerleader like that.
Absolutely, that's what she is, man. She's awesome, and she loves my stuff. I remember, I'll tell you a quick story. I've had a few gallery showings over the years since I've been doing photography, and I remember a year ago I had a gallery show at a little art showing at a local gallery in the French Quarter, and I invited like all of my family to come. And my mom had never actually seen my work up until then. She had only seen, like a couple of photos I took, of like landscapes and statues and stuff. She had never seen my nude artwork, and it was funny seeing her watching like my photos on the wall of like naked women just kind of laid out on the bed. And I remember walking up to her, and I was like, so what do you think? You like it? And she was like, yeah, it's good. She was like,
she couldn't say no because her son made it, but
exactly. And she couldn't be like, well, she basically told me, she's like, well, I didn't really know what you were doing, but
now I do.
Good. Yeah, she was like, it looks good. So congratulations. I was like, oh, thanks, Mom, you're awesome. And then I proceeded to to have a live photo shoot at the gallery of me shooting girls like in bondage on the sofa, so in front of my mom and my uncle and my aunt. So that was pretty hilarious.
That's a pretty good story. That's a great story. That says a lot too about
that. Definitely happened.
That's amazing. That says a lot too about your mom, that how supportive she is, especially like you said, how coming from a very religious point of view. I think about my family, and I've mentioned this in one of the other podcasts, but
I love your family.
I grew up in a big family, a big Catholic family. I'm the oldest of 10. And
you have 10 siblings?
Yeah, I'm the oldest. I have 9 siblings.
I'm the only child, so we're coming from complete different sides of the track. That's hilarious.
But my the same kind of thing is like my parents. They go to church almost every day, and
right.
It's amazing people, and most people love them. I'm not saying that as any kind of criticism, because I'm not religious, but that says a lot about your mom, that she's supportive of you, and kind of. I'm just thinking of a situation like that for myself, and I'd be like, whoa, that'd be a kind of overwhelming, I'm sure. So that says a lot about her if she has the character to kind of stick through it.
Has your parents seen like any of your work? I mean, because for one thing, I want to tell you one thing, man, because I've been following you now for a while, because I love your work and what you do in general. And we also have shot a lot of the same models, and we know a lot of the same models in the industry. But your work on your blog, man, with your, like your family, the kids and your wife, and it's like you guys are married, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, I just think it's lovely. It's like some of my favorite stuff because it's so personal. Coming from my perspective, to have that inside look at, your family where, your wife's like on the sofa reading to the kids and she's like naked, and I'm like, that's so, I don't even know how to think about that because I couldn't, I'm not used to seeing that as far as an image. And I just think it's so strong and powerful that you capture your family in these little moments where it's just like everyday life. It reminds me of, have you ever heard of this photographer called Jessica Todd Harper?
No, I don't think so.
She's fantastic, man. You really should like look her up on like Amazon and like get one of her books. But she shoots portraits of her family, kind of similar to you, just in normal everyday stuff. And it's like, it's just beautiful stuff because her family is like they live in this like huge cottage house and it's all these warm lights coming. It's beautiful imagery, man. Her name is Jessica Todd Harper, and I think you would really appreciate it because her work reminds me of your stuff. But yeah, man, I love your work, dude. It's lovely, and I go to your blog, as much as I can. Whenever I see you post a photo on Instagram, I'll be, oh, let me go check out Grant's blog and see what he's done lately. And
Thank you. That means a lot.
Seeing the photos. I love seeing the photos of your family, man. It's beautiful, dude. I love it. It's great.
Yeah,
so personal.
Yeah, no, that's kind of the thing. It's I don't get a ton of feedback.
I want to ask you how that started. Actually, I had a question for you. Like, how did that come about happening? Where you just started shooting photos of them? Because I'm just curious to how does that, start?
Well, I think it's a kind of a similar mentality to sort of what we've been talking about, and I have a lot of thoughts as to what sexuality is and its place
right.
in its role within our lives, and
right.
I kind of mentioned, I think people think about it very one-dimensionally, but I kind of see personally, I see sexuality as a way that we are actually kind of all interacting. It's a certain, it's basically how we, I guess, direct our intimacy is how I kind of define it. As far as shooting my family like that, it's was just kind of happening. And it actually started when we were living in Ecuador. And I'm really bad actually at finding models. Are you? I'm extremely bad at it. My wife actually helps me. I mean, I just don't reach out enough is what it comes down to.
Right.
And
yeah, that doesn't mean you're bad at it. That just means that you don't like reaching out to people. That doesn't mean you're bad. You just have a certain way about it. Some people aren't good at communicating as far as, I'm actually really good at that. Like I'm really good at, getting models to kind of shoot with me, except for the ones that don't want to shoot with me because of my work. Like I've had a lot of models turn me down from photography because they think that, my work is too explicit or too graphic for them.
Yeah, which is, I'm glad
fine.
that people know there are obviously limits because it isn't for everybody, obviously,
absolutely,
that kind of work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I also feel like, and I'm gonna I didn't mean to cut you off, I'm gonna let you finish.
No.
I also feel like, because I look at my work every now and then as like a whole spectrum, like I'll just look at pages of my Instagram, not conceited wise, but just because I want to see, is there some type of theme in there, and I'm like, I'm all over the place, man. Like my photography is everywhere, like the color schemes are everywhere and, the formats are everywhere. The subject matter is everywhere, so like, I feel like whenever I meet a model and I talk with them and they say that, they don't want to, my work isn't their cup of tea and they don't want to shoot with me, it kind of, makes me a little upset or sad because I'm like, are you looking at everything? I mean, or did you just look at like 4 photos and then you realize that you don't want to shoot because you saw nudity? I mean, I shoot a lot of different styles, man. Like I don't only shoot, nudity. I mean, I do, but I shoot a lot of different stuff. So whenever somebody tells you, I'm like, you honestly really didn't pay attention because if you just scroll down a little bit more, you'll see that I have tons of normal photographs. Like I shoot a lot of editorial style stuff. I shoot, we were just talking about my cinema series with, photos inspired by movies, and none of that stuff is like, graphic in any way. I know I have my dirty photos, what people would call them, but I feel like I have a wide range of the type of stuff I can shoot. And if I'm reaching out to a model kind of at this point, it's almost like I really want to shoot with you. Like I see something in you that I feel like, us working together would be a nice collaboration. And when that gets turned down, it kind of, makes me a little sad inside. 'Cause I'm like, oh, we could have made we could have made something special, you know. But now you're only looking at me from one angle, and I don't, you know, you're not. I don't like it, man.
Which is
But yeah, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but that's just
no, that
how
was great because I
stuff.
think almost kind of what I hear, what you're saying is that when a model sees that and she goes, "No, I don't want to work with you because you only do kind of more graphic images," and you're
Right.
saying, "No, that's not actually accurate. If you would have kind of delve a little bit more, then you would see that
Yeah.
there's a lot more to it." It's kind of the same thing that you were even criticizing men for looking at it in that very one-dimensional way as well.
Right.
And
Very true.
I think that's the thing is that I think most artists, they really want their work to be seen a deeper way, in a more complex way than just simply getting something from it in this kind of split second. And it's really difficult, I think, in this day and age of social media to create that deeper understanding, because people are just kind of flipping through your photos, and there's always this difficult balance
Right.
between trying to post something that engages people in a way
Right.
where they'll actually stop and look at it, and then to actually have something that also has enough substance to kind of keep their attention. And that's a really
Oh no.
difficult balance to find.
Oh, it's almost impossible, man. Because dealing with Instagram now, and having a little bit of a following on Instagram, like you know what photos people want to see, and it sucks because you get sucked into like posting stuff for them,
Yeah.
just because it's the likes and the follows. Because when I post a photo of something that I really worked hard on, something I planned out, a photo shoot that I planned out with somebody that I really love, those photos don't get any likes. Nobody likes those photos except for a handful of people. But when I post a photo of, a girl on a sofa, with her butt in the air, that gets, tons and tons and tons and tons of likes. Like people, people love that. And I get it. You want to see, the more, the more, erotic kind of, beautiful women type of stuff. You don't really care about the substance photos, but those are my favorites. I mean, I love them all. I love all of my work equally. I'm not going to say that, but the ones that I work really hard on, I really,
You
those
want
are the
people to
ones I
see
actually
that
want you
just
to,
as much. Yeah.
yeah, and I want you to see that and be like, man, those photos came out great. There's not just a naked woman in there. You're composing stuff, cinematically and putting stuff on the right side of the frame that that you don't want to take attention from them. There's all these great things, man. And with Instagram and social media now, it's like we're all drones to this stuff, and it's the worst. Like I hate Instagram so much. Grant, I'm being honest.
Oh yeah.
I hate it, but I also love it. So it's
Yeah.
like it's I don't know what to do about it, man,
I know
because
what you
it's
mean.
like, yeah, it has me. I don't know what to do about it. Like I have to post stuff on a regular basis. If I don't, I feel like, damn, I didn't post anything today. That's gonna suck. Then when I post them, I'm like, shit, I shouldn't have posted this today. So Instagram is the worst, man. It's terrible, but it's it has us by the hand, pulling us along, man, taking us, and we have to reform to its power.
And it's like you mentioned, certain photos will get a bunch of likes, and it
Yeah.
becomes a little bit like Pavlov's dog. You
Yes.
and you start tailoring. It's easy to start tailoring yourself to
It
that,
is.
and
It's
you don't
very
even
easy.
realize it's happening. It's like a frog in
Right.
boiling water type of thing, and you don't know what's happening till you look back on your photos, like you said, and you start noticing, oh, I'm just posting this stuff, but that
Right.
really isn't everything I'm trying to go for, and and it's it kind of starts,
Yeah,
like you said, leading you by the hand in a direction that you maybe don't want to go. So it's hard to be intentional and kind of push against that. And
I agree.
I don't have a good answer to
Nobody does.
yeah,
Nobody does.
maybe like our children's children will eventually figure it out or something like that.
Yeah,
But I think in the meantime,
maybe by that time they'll have a conclusion and know how to work the system, because we're all just lost in it right now.
yeah, it kind of my oldest daughter is
Yeah.
she's 13. We've actually started watching the show Black Mirror with her.
Oh,
And
that's awesome. That's so cool.
and there's obviously a lot of critiques of society, especially in regards
Absolutely.
to social media and stuff.
That's all it's about, man.
Yeah.
How does she react to that? That's so curious. I would love to know what a 13-year-old thinks of Black Mirror.
She actually she really wants to direct films. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, so she's had an interest in doing this for a while, and she shoots stuff herself and she edits it and stuff like
What?
that. And
That's amazing, dude. That's so cool.
yeah, and she teaches
Great,
herself
dude.
on YouTube, and which is an incredible resource. Like, there's no reason to not know something if you know.
I agree 100. I agree 100%, man. Yeah, I learned photography just self-taught. I mean, I went to school for filmmaking, but I mean, even going to school for that, I didn't really learn a lot of the stuff that I ended up thinking that I really needed to know until after film school. You don't really learn about doing these type of things until you're actually doing them. I mean, you can have all the book knowledge that you need and know all these different things, but until you're out there making mistakes and throwing it around, you're really not going to know. And I know early on I said that I'm one of those guys who reads a lot before I start doing stuff, because I am that guy. But at the same time, it's a mix of both. But as far as like film school goes, man, until I worked in that camera rental house where I learned about lenses and cameras, that was something I couldn't have learned at school. Like, school is all about foundation, and getting out there and doing is about building. You get the foundation from school, but you build from actually doing stuff. So I think that's great, man, that you have a little young Sophia Coppola on your hands, because it's really dope, man. She's 13 and wants to make movies. I hope she keeps it up, dude.
Yeah, I do too, and she definitely has an eye for it, and she has a passion for it. At a pretty young age. So yeah, we try.
Awesome.
We've been trying to, kind of similar to your dad, watch movies that especially that will edify her. It's a really cool experience, and it'll be interesting to see how that forms her. But like you said, being a parent, you kind of never know, especially when you're with your oldest. But luckily, I've had the experience of growing up in a big family, so
Right.
I have I can see maybe a little bit where my parents messed up, and
No, for
not
sure.
not that they
Absolutely.
not that they messed up a lot, but
Well, I mean,
luckily I have it.
having 10 kids, there's no way to get all 10 of them right. Like, it's crazy, man. But that's really cool, man. I'm glad that she's into it, and it says a lot about you guys as parents that you even have a 13-year-old girl that actually wants to make movies, because most parents, with kids that young, they're not even worried about what they want to do. They're mostly about just get good grades and
We actually homeschool the kids as well, so
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, and I was actually homeschooled, and we're about the same age. So I was born in '83, so we're kind of one of
Yeah,
the,
we're the same age. I was born in '83 as well.
not very many people homeschooled when I was younger. It was always usually either like the weird religious people.
Yes,
Or-
nobody homeschooled when we were kids.
Yeah. So it's been interesting with our background. It's allowed us to kind of travel around and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of going back to even just the series that I shot. We were around the family a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
so it just kind of was a natural thing to almost document. So that's kind of how that all happened.
I love that stuff, man. It's it's beautiful. I don't know if you're working on like a long life series or something that you're going to put together in like 20 years from now when they're all grown or something like that, of like these photos. But I definitely see something there, man. You're working with something. You got something there. That's all I can say. It's captivating to me. So I think that it's beautiful. I love it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, that
Very
means a
well.
lot. Hearing those things.
I would actually love to to work with your wife one day, man. And like, if we're ever in the same area, I would love to to take some photos of her at some point. Maybe you as well. I don't shoot guys that much. That's actually something I'm going to try to work on more.
Same here,
Is,
actually. Yeah.
is shooting more males. But yeah, man. Your family's great, and I love the photo. I love your photography, man. You're an awesome dude.
Thanks. That means a lot.
No,
But,
of course, you're welcome, man.
Yeah. One of the things, though, we're kind of getting close. I'm always kind of curious about with people who work with nudity in this respect, and we've been talking a lot about it. What does sexuality mean to you beyond the act of sex? And do you see it playing a role kind of in our lives in a bigger way?
I think it definitely plays a role in everybody's life, even if they don't notice it. I think even in people who aren't out there creating artwork, I think sexuality, like I was saying earlier about America and how this is like a censored country, even though sexuality is thrown in our face at every turn. But I think as far as my work goes, there's definitely sexuality attached to my images. I know that. I'm not trying to hide it. I want it to be there. I want sexuality to be more open, and I want people to, I mean, especially women. Like my whole thing is, I didn't even notice when I first started, but after, working for years and shooting so many women and working with different girls, you start to realize that, a lot of women are really ashamed of, their body, and a lot of women are self-conscious about how they look, and, they're not, when it comes to their looks, they're not, it can be the most beautiful woman. I know a girl to this day who's one of the prettiest girls I've ever seen, and she thinks that she's not attractive, and it's like, you don't really know that, going in, but you come to find out that a lot of women are, so self-conscious about a lot of their flaws in their bodies and stuff like that. So I think one of the things I try to do is every model I work with, I try to show, even if they're just naturally beautiful, I try to show a side of them in my photography that they don't always see. I try to make them, feel kind of good about themselves and make them look as beautiful as an image that I can create can be. So it's about showing different sides, and even if they're already, really pretty, normally gorgeous girls, I try to show them a different side of themselves. So looking at them from a different angle, or showing them, from the back, where it's just like a waist up shot and there's no bra, and you just see the curves in their back, and they didn't even know that their back looked like that. But, you can make a back look beautiful. Everything about a woman, their curves and, their hair and everything, it's just, they're naturally, I think, beautiful. And, it's being a photographer and being a male trying to capture that, you're just trying to show that, to not just to the girl, but to everybody who's watching the photo. You want people to look at the image and, and be like, wow, that is a beautiful, beautiful woman, and, you want to, try to portray that. So sexuality is like, you don't want it to be about sex, but you want them to know that you are sexy, like anybody can be sexy, any woman, any man. It's all about confidence. It's about, not as much about how you look, but more about how you carry yourself. And I think sexuality is a big part of that, man. I think that with my work, I try to, bring that out, in any way I possibly can, whether it's, making the girls laugh or smile while we're shooting and capturing that shot, or having them arch their back a certain way, or having them put their leg up the way they put their hand on their knee, like there's a million different ways, the way you have a woman, like just put her finger on the side of her lip as she's looking down and the sun's hitting her at the right moment. There are a lot of things that can be sexy that people don't even notice, and, with women. So yeah, with my work and my art and my photos, I just try to show that the best way I can, coming from a 34-year-old man, who doesn't know anything about women. I'm just trying to play my part and, and help them. They don't need my help, but just, try to make them look as beautiful and as sexy as I possibly can, with my shots. And I think that's that's kind of what I try to do with them, man. I hope it works out for most people. When they see it, they kind of look at them and get that from it, and not just think about sex. It's not about sex. It's about, as you say, sexuality. Sexuality and sex are two different things, So I don't know if I can actually explain. It's more of, sex is just, graphic, penetration, I guess.
The act of it.
The act of actually having sex, and sexuality is the, anything can, a lot of things can be sexy. A woman, drinking a wine from a glass can be sexy. So you have to be nude. You can have a business suit on. It's more about, the looks and, like I said, the confidence and the way they carry themselves, and the way you try to capture that as a photographer. You try to capture their essence. It all comes down to the essence of that person. Every woman has a different essence about themselves, and it's up to you, I think, to try to bring that out. It doesn't always happen. Every shoot isn't 100% successful. But I think if you take, 100 shots of somebody, if you get one where you capture that essence, I think you've done your job.
Yeah, trying to change that kind of perspective even.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're trying to, you're trying to capture, at least me, I'm trying to capture everybody. Every photographer is different, trying to look for different things. With me, I'm trying to capture, the essence of that person the best that I can in a certain situation we're in. I mean, most of the time it's, in a room on a bed, surrounded by roses. Most of the time it's in a window, sitting on a love seat. Most of the time it's in the back of a car, in a car seat. Like it doesn't matter. The location doesn't really matter. It's more about the person and what you're shooting.
Yeah, and then some kind of quick questions here to sort of wrap things up. What are some of your favorite books?
I have so many, man. I collect books, a lot of them. So you want to know the specific books or the type of books I collect?
Yeah, the specifics would be great.
Okay, so specifics. That's funny because I'm actually in my room right now and I can look directly at my bookshelf. So that's perfect. So I would say my favorite book that I own would have to be a Robert Mapplethorpe book. That's just about him shooting flowers. I don't know if you know of his flower work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah. So I have a nice book of his. It's called Flowers Mapplethorpe, and the inside text is written by Patti Smith. And it's one of my favorite books, just because if anybody's seen my work, you know that I love flowers.
Yeah,
and I'm a fan of flowers, and that comes into.
I meant to bring that up. I'm glad you brought that up. I totally forgot to bring that up.
We can talk about it. We can talk about it now. So it's Mapplethorpe is a big influence of that. Iraqi is a big influence of that because he uses flowers in his work. Japanese photography in general. There's a lot of shooting flowers and Japanese photographers' work because there's a lot of beautiful flowers in Japan and in Asian culture in general. So yeah, I mean that's probably my favorite book because of the images inside. I have a book by I think I mentioned it earlier actually, by Andrew Tarkovsky, called Instant Light. I don't know if you've heard about this, but
no, I haven't
it's
heard that
basically one. It's a book by Tarkovsky. He's a filmmaker. It's not by him because he's no longer with us. I think he's passed away. But it's a book that's basically all of his Polaroids that he shot in between making movies, and it's all landscapes. So it's just Polaroid images from his movies. Well, not his movies, but his on-set movies and just his life in general from his house with his family. And it's quite beautiful and breathtaking. And it's called Instant Light Tarkovsky Polaroids. That was one of my earlier books that I bought a long time ago because I love his film work. When I found that he actually took Polaroids, I couldn't wait to actually get it. I have probably my prized possession. Actually, I forgot to even mention this. I have a book called Stanley Kubrick, The Greatest Movie Never Made, which is a book based around Stanley Kubrick's unmade movie about Napoleon. I don't know if you've heard of. I don't know if you actually heard about that.
I've heard of it. I don't really know much about it though. Okay,
so Kubrick, before he made Barry Lyndon, was in the process of making a movie about Napoleon's life, and he was. I mean, anybody that knows his work, you know that he's just a perfectionist. So he goes into detail about every movie he makes, and he writes down tons of notes and takes tons of pictures and goes to a million locations. It's nuts. But anyway, he was obsessed with Napoleon, and basically, according to this book that I have, he basically plotted out Napoleon's life at some point from age 15 to 24, and basically he can recite everything that Napoleon did every day of his life from the age of 15 to 24 off of research that he did, which just thinking about the scope of that is nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this book, it's like a big Bible, and there's little books inside of it. And basically it's just, it has the script, the screenplay in it, and it has pictures of costume design and budget, when he was going over stuff with the studio. But basically he was going to make this movie. It was going to be the most expensive movie ever made at the time. And another studio, I think, ended up making a Napoleon film before he did. And the studio decided to not back him because they thought what his other and that movie tanked. So they were like, well, we're not gonna make another Napoleon film after one's already been made.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna lose money on it. So it kind of depressed him for a while because he was so into making that movie. So he took some years off, and then he ran across this book, which happened to be, Barry Lyndon. And then he took most of the stuff that he was going to do for Napoleon, and he used that, info and helped him to make Barry Lyndon. So that's how we got that amazingly beautiful film.
Pretty interesting.
But yeah, it's really interesting if you really do some research about it, man. It's really cool. But yeah, that book is awesome. That's my prized possession. But I have a bunch of Iraqi books. I have a big almost Bible book that has a bunch of his books of his work. Yeah,
he's pretty prolific. His books are he puts out books all the time.
He's made over 200 books, man. So I have one of them, which is this huge big red book that looks like a Bible that has like a bunch of his books inside of it, basically like chapters. That's like a really, really important book to me because that's kind of like all of his work into one.
Any kind of novels or anything like that, or
Yeah, I have a bunch of novels. I have
that like some of your favorites or any really influential books, other than
yeah, absolutely.
photography ones?
I have a book right here. Sorry to talk about photography books. I wasn't even thinking about other books.
No,
But,
no, no, you're fine. It's good.
I
It's
have
great.
I have a really, really great book called American Prometheus, and it's about Robert Oppenheimer, and if you know who he is, he's the guy who built the atom bomb, I think, the nuclear bomb.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to remember. Why does that sound familiar? Yeah.
Yeah, so
the Manhattan Project and stuff like that.
Yes, the Manhattan Project, right? So this book is a great book that basically goes through his life leading up until him making the bomb, and talks about his day-to-day life and struggles with dealing with that. And it's a really great book. I think it'd actually be a great movie if anybody ever made it. Maybe on the outs for me in the future.
Yeah, there you go. Another one to the producers listening.
Yeah, and I'm actually looking right now, just really quick, that one of my favorite books of all time is a book by the late great Maurice Sendak.
Yeah,
I think that's how you say his last name.
Yeah,
called
Maurice
Where the Wild
Sendak.
Things Are.
Oh,
Maurice Sendak. Yeah.
My mom used to read that to me as a kid. That was one of my favorite books growing up.
It's one of my favorite books, man. I still own the one I had when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I actually, when I came back home after Katrina and all of my stuff was kind of ruined, I ended up finding that book along with some other stuff, and it's pretty in bad shape. But I was like, I'm gonna keep this book. It's like one of my favorites. Also, one of my favorite movies. I love the movie that Spike Jonze made, Where the Wild Things Are.
It is great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great, man. It's just a big kid thing. But yeah, that's some of my stuff, man. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but I'm not gonna bore you with all my useless books. But there's a lot of them. I collect a lot of books. So
how about bands?
Some of them are reads. Some of them I read. Some of them are just pictures. So it's kind of in between.
No, it's great. That's. I'm trying to, I want to give people even just try to get a better picture of kind of where you're coming from, and even hopefully have people check these things out. But what about music?
Music, that's such a large topic. We'll be here for another 2 hours talking about music.
Or top three.
Top three music and bands maybe in my life.
Yeah.
Number one would probably have to be Michael Jackson. I'm a diehard, huge Michael Jackson fan. Regardless of the allegations, I don't know what he did or what he didn't do.
Yeah, his music.
But as far as his music goes, I think he's the greatest, artist of all time. Especially when I was growing up, Michael Jackson was just. There were two people in my I have posters and stuff all around my room. It was Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan. It was like, it was a poster. I had like
a Michael Jordan poster.
Yeah, man. Like I had like a life size, like 6'4".
I had that same one.
Thing of Michael Jordan in my room.
Did it have like the measuring tape next to it?
It had the measuring thing on it.
I had the same one.
That's so cool. That's awesome, dude. We're like soul brothers. We have so much in common. It's awesome. But it was Michael Jordan and Michael Jackson. So Michael Jackson is probably my favorite artist of all time. I listen to his music all the time. Whenever I feel like being happy, whenever I feel like being, whenever I need to get into a zone, I listen to, his music. Funny enough, I'm one of the people that I think his best album is Dangerous, and I know that's kind of sacrilege for people who love Michael Jackson. But being, 34 years old when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s. I caught Michael Jackson on the middle of his career when he, I wasn't, even though I'm a huge fan of all his music. When Dangerous came out, it's when I was growing up and I was like a teenager. And I remember getting that album and listening to it on repeat, hundreds of times. I just love everything about the Dangerous album. So that's my favorite album. Michael Jackson, I'm also a huge Black Sabbath fan. Black Sabbath's probably my favorite rock and roll band of all time. I love Ozzy and I love all those guys, and I love their music. I remember being like a young kid, being Black and growing up listening to weird music because, when you're Black, you only have to listen to hip hop music and soul. And I'm listening to, I'm listening to Black Sabbath, I'm listening to Metallica, I'm listening to all type of stuff, man. My palette for music is ridiculous. Like, I love Elton John music. There's so much. Reggae, I love Bob Marley and a bunch of different stuff. I mean, I do love hip hop. I don't want anybody out there to think I don't love hip hop. I love hip hop. It's probably my favorite genre of music.
Yeah.
But you gotta open ears, man. Listen to a lot of different stuff. But so it's Michael Jackson, Black Sabbath, and I guess I would have to go with Tupac if I had to pick some hip hop music, man.
Nice.
I'd go with the great Tupac Shakur as my favorite rapper of all time. He was amazing and died too young, and he's great. I love all of his music, his whole catalog, dude. He's great. He's one of my artists when I was growing up, like Michael Jackson. I just listened to their music on constant, So it's like I was listening to like Michael Jackson, Tupac, and like NSYNC or some shit. It was like
Yeah.
it's my
Yeah, it
my
doesn't seem to
music taste
mesh
all
very
over.
well, but yeah.
No, it doesn't, dude. It's just I like a lot. I like a lot of different. I'm a weird dude. What can I say? I like a lot of different shit. But yeah, man. So that's as far as my music goes, that's about it. I mean, I like a lot of different stuff. I can go on and on, but those are like my top three probably.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, and then I have just one last question for you, and it's that I've been asking people, and it is kind of maybe somewhat of an abstract or difficult question, but in just a sentence or two, or very kind of quickly, what is it that you feel that you can contribute positively to the world that is unique to you?
That is an interesting question. Let's see. What can I do to contribute to the world?
That's unique to you, whether it's a perspective or it's a virtue or of some kind, or something that you really identify with, that maybe is even easy to you, that seems to be difficult to other people, that that you really seem to be able to get across that other people can't.
Oh, I think in a nutshell, man, it would just be perception. I think that art, is about freedom, and I think I feel like even art now has a societal norm, that kind of make artists, it makes artists feel like they have to do things a certain way to get recognized, and I feel like do what you want to do, no matter how you want to do it, and don't worry about the perception of what people are going to think about what you're doing. If you want to, do crazy, over the top, weird, erotic stuff, do it. I mean, just make sure you have consent from the person you're doing it with. I mean, that's the number one thing. But do whatever you want, man. Like, art is about freedom. I mean, it's the only place we can do the stuff we want to do and not worry about how it's going to come out. I mean, so yeah, man. I just feel like perception is a big thing. I want people to not worry about how stuff is perceived, and just go about. If you're not an artist, just go about opening your mind and finding new art, finding different stuff. Don't be afraid to venture out and go to your local museums and go to your local galleries and see some cool stuff. I mean, you're not gonna like everything you see, but maybe something will resonate with you. You'll see it and you'll be like, wow. You'll stop and I remember when I was a kid, I never thought about. I saw it in movies before where like adults would go to museums and just look at paintings or just art for for a long time. They'll just stand there and look at it. And as a kid, I'm like, what are they looking at? I don't get it, But now that I'm like older and I kind of see myself in those shoes, I do that. I go to galleries all the time, and I'm always at the NOMA here, walking around looking at old paintings and drawings and artwork, because you get something from that stuff. It's beautiful, and I think people should open their minds and expand your minds, and just don't be afraid to try new things, and don't be afraid to open up, and just be different. Being different is cool. Being different is unique. As awkward as that sounds, just don't worry about perception. So yeah, I hope that answered that in the best way I could, trying to wrap it up a little bit. But
No, that's
but
great.
yeah, I think it's all about the perception, man.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming on here and talking about all this stuff. I know it can be a little challenging, and I personally, I just really like kind of going in depth, and hopefully other people will do as well. So I really want to say thank you for doing that and giving us your feedback and your opinions and your perspective on all this. I really appreciate it.
Nah, thank you, man. Listen, I was surprised when you contacted me about doing this, because we didn't know each other. But I know that, you follow me and I follow you. So it was really awesome when you wanted to do this with me, because I was like, oh, somebody's actually interested in what I have to say about stuff, which isn't normal, because I don't think nobody ever cares. So it was really cool, man, like talking to you about all these fun things and going down memory lane with stuff that happened in my past and my life. And it was really entertaining and fun. And I hope that, people out here hear this and kind of like it and just get something from it. You know, I hope that, you know, everybody you interview, all the models and photographers who you contact, you know, they take with open arms and just open up and be free about it, because it's, I feel a little better, man, after this conversation with you. Honestly, I can say that. Like, I feel like, I mean, I felt fine before. I'm not saying I was down, but I just feel like after talking with you about so many things and at one time, you know, it's like, it's pretty freeing, man. It feels kind of good to kind of get all that stuff off my chest and, you know, talk about it on a format. And you're really good at what you do, man. I don't think you've been doing this long, but
no, this is actually just the fourth one.
Oh, well, you're already
episode number 4.
You're already professional, because you're very good at it, and everything was great. So I appreciate you bringing me on, man. It's been awesome.
Well, thanks, Sidney. I appreciate it. And where can people reach out to you? Where do you want them to follow along with you?
Well, as always, you know, I talked about how much I hate Instagram, but you guys can get on me on that little platform called Instagram, with my name on there is Sid Antman, and that's SIDANTMAN. Contact me on there if you want to talk, or if you're a model and you want to book something that you want to shoot, or you just want to shoot the shit. It's all good, man. I'm always open. My DMs are constantly open, and I love talking to people about art and movies and photography. So I'm all into it, man. So yeah, contact me there.
Well, thanks a lot, Sidney. I appreciate it.
No problem, bud. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone that has listened. If you enjoyed this episode and others, I would love to hear your feedback, as well as any suggestions you might have. You can contact me at grant@gtrimble.com. That's grant@gtrimble.com, or visit my website for show notes at gtrimble.com, and then click the podcast link. Don't forget to follow Sidney on Instagram. That's at SidAntman, SIDANTMAN, as well as my IG, that's gtrimble_photo. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell your loved ones and show your support by clicking the subscribe button and leaving a review, and don't forget to spread the word.